Today's discussion will be presented in 3 sections since we're recording it for a radio broadcast on Federal News Radio 1500 AM. You're welcome to post questions and comments during the session and we'll try to answer them online. I'd like to introduce you to our moderator, Jason Miller, Executive Editor at Federal News Radio 1500 AM and federalnewsradio.com.
Welcome to the discussion. My guests today are Joe Klimovich, the Justice Department's Chief Information Officer, Doug Nash, the Agriculture Department's Deputy Chief Information Officer, Christine Calvosa, the Federal Communication Commission's Deputy Chief Information Officer, and Tim Solms, the U.S. Federal Managing Director of Worldwide Government at Juniper Networks. Welcome to the program today.
Thank you.
Before we get started, let me set some context for our discussion. The federal government has bought into cloud computing, without a doubt. In the short 7 years since the Obama administration's cloud-first policy, many agencies have quickly gone past the crawl stage and into the walk stage, and really are getting ready to the running stage. IDC Government Insights predicts agencies will spend about 5.8% of its IT budget on cloud services this year alone. That's a 5% increase over 2015. Now, this means agencies will spend about $6.7 billion on cloud computing. Most of that money is going to be going toward infrastructure as a service, about $1.2 billion according to IDC. Agencies are also ramping up their spending on software as a service, spending more than $700 million on that area. In fact, at a recent conference, a DoD official said that software as a service for the military offers the most bang for its buck around both cost savings and mission benefits. Additionally, IDC predicts agencies will spend about $231 million on platform as a service. So while those numbers sound gaudy without a doubt, there's plenty of room for not only more spending, but more ability to take advantage of cloud services. Agencies also are attracted to cloud for potential security, efficiencies, and elasticity to meet mission needs more effectively. And then there's the network modernization push coming from the Office of Management and Budget. That's also driving agencies toward the cloud. Agencies still spend about 68% of their budget on legacy systems. The cloud offers a path to get off those legacy systems. In fact, the Federal IT Dashboard says agencies have about 8.5% of all spending on cloud, or what they call provisioned services. So there is a growth there. And by moving to the cloud, network modernization takes on an entirely different concept, because the cloud lets agencies, through technologies like software-defined networking, remain dynamic and fluid to meet their ever-changing needs. But the idea of fluidity in your network also requires agencies to rethink security, workforce, and even pay models. The pay model, or the utility model, may be among the most difficult obstacles toward move to cloud computing. But the good news is agencies are proving that that's doable, and acquisition experts in government are figuring out what policy changes are needed to meet those needs around cloud computing. Those are just some of the issues we're going to address in our panel today. Once again, with that context in place, let me introduce our guests. Joe Klimovich, the Justice Department's Chief Information Officer. Doug Nash, the Agriculture Department's Deputy Chief Information Officer. Christine Calvosa, the Federal Communications Commission's Deputy Chief Information Officer. And Tim Solms, the U.S. Federal Managing Director of Worldwide Government at Juniper Networks. So let me turn to our panel. Let me start with Christine in the middle there for once, since the FCC in many ways has really taken the bull by the horns and really jumped right feet first into the cloud. When I talk about crawl, walk, run, I think you're sprinting right now in the cloud. Talk a little bit about your experiences so far over the last year with cloud.
Sure, absolutely. Thank you, Jason. So at the FCC currently, we are focused both on moving to cloud-based solutions for both our internal services and our external services. Over the past year, we've made a leap into modernizing and moving to cloud services for internal aspects that include our email, Office 365, our SharePoint sites. We've migrated all of those to the cloud. In addition, we have invested in box services for moving our file systems and services over to a cloud-based solution, and as well as really take some time for open data platform. We've invested in Socrata services. We're investing in other business intelligence solutions that are cloud-based so that we can better assist our users with more accurate and better decision-making abilities.
And you guys had the, forget the proper name of it, the massive server lift of 2015. Operation Server Lift.
Yes.
I remember David Bray, the CIO, has talked a lot about that. Now we are almost a year later. Things are still great. You love it. It's the best thing since sliced bread.
Things are great. We just had our 1-year anniversary over Labor Day weekend, where we had a good celebration, so we're happy about that. And now really the next step is focused, I know I talked a little bit about the internal, but we're really focused about moving our external applications to the cloud. So a lot of those, I can list some, but some of them that we've done recently over the past year is we've modernized our website. FCC.gov is on AWS and Drupal, and we have obviously, we've talked about the Consumer Help Center. We have our Public Safety Support Center as well. We also have moved some of our public safety applications from in-house to the cloud. And also, just the latest one is our ECFS system. We've modernized that. I'm happy about that. And we've got, and I have a list here, but we've got about at least 6 more in the pipeline that we're focused on this year that will also carry us into the next year, to include identity management, GIS, to include our licensing and modernizing one of our mission critical areas, which is licensing by leveraging ServiceNow capabilities. So we are eager, moving fast with the small applications and the larger mission critical systems into the cloud.
Now, Doug, let me turn to you, because Agriculture Department was one of those other agencies that jumped into the cloud early, mainly for email. There's a lot of news we wrote about, I want to say 2011 timeframe,
2011, yeah.
when you guys took on email in the cloud. Where are we since then?
Well, we're doing a lot as well. Currently with cloud at USDA, certainly we have email, Office 365, collaboration software. We have, we're using Remedy on Demand for our enterprise help desk services. CRM, we're a big user of Salesforce, and we continue to grow that. One of the things we're focusing very heavily on is maturing our enterprise cloud capabilities, because we had agencies, like a lot of organizations, where individual agencies were starting to pursue cloud. We wanted to leverage enterprise solution, so we've been working on a cloud strategy this year. It's almost finished. That's guiding our overall cloud services. We want to adopt a small number of commercial cloud services rather than having a lot out there. We're starting with Microsoft Azure. We've developed our business processes, an onboarding process, a playbook. For Azure, we've begun to onboard the initial agencies that are going to use Azure for dev test, and then we'll move into production. But we're also moving as quickly as we can, but we want to do it in a managed, thoughtful way so we get the best benefit.
So I want to ask a little bit about the strategy. I know it's not done yet. You're still a work in progress. Generally speaking, is it going to ensure that the sub-agencies or the bureaus within USDA all move in kind of the lockstep, meaning you don't have to go to one provider, but if you go, here's the things you need to know?
Right, exactly. First off, we fully embrace cloud first strategy. We want to make commercial cloud services available to agencies based on their mission needs. We want to do it in a smart way in terms of how we approach security, how we approach the network architecture. So for example, individual agencies aren't connecting separately via the network to cloud services. Instead, we're looking at developing a cloud exchange architecture. But it's all about just doing things in a coordinated, consolidated way, and also looking at the security side, how we can streamline that, look at leveraging security and FedRAMP in terms of inheritance, so every agency doesn't have to go through the same security network onboarding process separately.
The hope I know is that once USDA says yes to a cloud service under FedRAMP, the Food Safety and Inspection Service doesn't have to say yes as well. It should be, you're good to go.
Exactly.
Let me turn to Joe Klimovich from Justice Department. You guys are, I wouldn't say behind, but I know that you have been at Justice now 2 years?
2.5 years.
2.5 years, time flies. Talk a little bit about what you've been able to do over the last few years.
Well, I think it's amazing, Jason, when you think about how far we've come as federal government in the last couple of years in the cloud area. But when we talk about cloud and justice, we're really talking about a hybrid model where we have an on-prem and off-prem private cloud solutions. We also have public and gov cloud solutions that we're taking advantage of. A lot of the factors, the sensitivity of the information. In justice, we have a lot of very sensitive law enforcement information, and so it's a key factor in terms of what we take advantage of and where we locate our information. Cost efficiency and then just the general readiness of the solution is something else. But you asked about progress. We have over 20 cloud solutions today that we're taking advantage of within the department. And it's a key component of our data center consolidation. In 2010, we had 110 data centers. We're now down to around 40 data centers. But we're moving a lot of that, especially the stuff that isn't so mission critical, out to the commercial cloud solutions. You know, one of our largest cloud initiatives to date is moving to a private instance of Microsoft Office 365. When I got there, we just consolidated down to from 23 email systems to 9. And what we're doing is we're moving to one cloud instance that's a very secure 365 solution. And I look at, you know, cloud it's not the answer to everything, but it is certainly a mission enabler that we need to take advantage of these opportunities today. If you're not, you're left behind. But again, we put together a cloud strategy roadmap where we really emphasized automating the services and putting a catalog together where people could take advantage of these services very rapidly. We have a cloud management team because I think, from my perspective, a lot of the components want help in terms of how best to make that transition. Want to make sure that we're making the right acquisitions and investments in cloud technologies and leverage our buying power. As Doug was saying there with agriculture, we want to make sure that we're putting together vehicles that make it easy for components to consume the services, but also leverage our buying power. And to that end, we established a task order vehicle with using Department of Interior's cloud procurement vehicle. And so there we've got we can go to infrastructure as a service very, very rapidly, and we've got solutions already in place, and we're sure that they're meeting our security standards. And as I think as Doug was saying too, is that we put a lot of emphasis on the network and on security in getting to these cloud solutions. So we fully embrace cloud-first policy, and we're making a lot of progress in this area.
So I'm interested just real quick on that, on the vehicle you talked about. You went to the Interior. So Interior we know has a big cloud contract. Yes. Did you kind of just lay a Justice Department contract on top of it? I mean, I'm simplifying.
So we had been using that vehicle for at least a year in advance, and we had 4 or 5 organizations had used that vehicle. But what we didn't want to do, because I think there were 10 primes and many different subs on that vehicle with a nice ceiling. It was we looked at all the possible vehicles, rather than trying to establish our own. I'm always trying to leverage something that's already been done. But rather than doing that, where all of our information would be in many different cloud environments, we wanted to, 1, get the best possible unit price, but 2, know where our information is, and then make it easy and work the network and cybersecurity going out to the cloud so that everybody doesn't have to work that individually.
All right, interesting. It's good to hear that you didn't go after your own vehicle. Too many times we hear throughout government, well, yours would be good, but ours would be better. Tim, let me turn to you at Juniper. Doug, jump in real quick.
Sorry, I was just going to say, we're also using the DOI cloud contract for our Azure services, and USDA naturally works very closely with DOI anyways because of the Forest Service DOI mission, but we've been very pleased with the options that were available through DOI.
It's, again, refreshing to hear because so many times people go in their own way. And poor Tim's got to bid on all those different cloud contracts. Yeah, well, you just heard 3 kind of different pieces and parts. Let's get some reaction. What are you hearing from your customers?
Yeah, it's interesting. You opened up by saying that the federal government has bought into cloud computing, and I'd kind of challenge you on that one. I think we look at it kind of like getting a flu shot, right? You know you need it, but it's never fun and it's a little bit painful. And when we look at the percent of spend, well, you talked roughly about 5% of spend, and you heard examples in here. We migrated a lot of licensing models from on-prem to cloud-based licensing models, which makes up for a considerable part of that. It's also very interesting to see that we've got folks leading that are really in that civilian federal space, very decentralized, the ability to make independent decisions, doing sort of highly centralized things. As you look across the full cloud continuum, there is a lot of room for us to continue to look. If we're talking about core compute, storage, applications, and all the associated services and support that go with those, that makes up a considerable part of a budget. So what is the inhibitor? Well, we know that certifications and federal IT acquisition are both at a place where they need to rapidly reform. And we brought those up. Not easy to do in a highly regulated industry. The trend that I like is where 3 years ago, every meeting was with a contracting officer or an attorney, we're now starting seeing the leadership, both the mission leadership and the IT leadership, stepping up and engaging, saying we have to step outside of our comfort zone. We know that we're going to have to take a little bit of risk, and we're going to find the right partners to step forward and do that.
It's interesting that, Tim, when you bring up kind of where agencies are at, and they're moving the licensing models as an example, Office 365 maybe is the easy one to pick on. And that's the low-hanging fruit. I mean, that's where you have to start. That's where most people start. But one of the things that I think you're seeing, and one of the things that you're interested in as well, is the network model, right? Absolutely. The network modernization, how cloud plays into that. Just give me a little bit of sense of okay, so these agencies that we're talking with today, sure, they got that low-hanging fruit. How they reach for that higher fruit?
Well, and so really, I look at a couple of the indicators that I have that say, okay, as I look at my business, if I see the software and services growing exponentially faster than the hardware, I know we're headed in the right direction in supporting the federal government. So because we're not there yet, we know we've got room to continue to transform that part of the business. We're talking about applications and services that are highly latency sensitive. And so that the services that are provided by agencies down to the users and operational, or agencies in the field have to be enabled by that. When we look at network, it is that one part of that IT space that really has yet to be disrupted. You talked about software-defined networking, a very different method to do that, but we still tend to look at historical models of acquiring hardware, waiting up to a year to implement that hardware to do network improvement. And if we look at other areas like financial services who have sort of leapt over that, saying we have to jump into software-defined networking because our network has to enable cloud services much faster and much better. So I do see, as I look at the business that I manage, I do see software and services starting to take the lead over hardware. Don't buy routing. Don't buy a router, buy routing. Don't buy switches, buy switching. So that acts as a service. We look at networking as a service in a way that supports the critical security, the critical transformation of the agencies that we're talking about.
I want to go back to the point on the network yet to be disruptive, but we're going to take a break first. When we come back, we'll lead off with that. You're listening to the panel discussion, Capitalizing on Cloud, Transforming Government IT, sponsored by Juniper Networks, on federalnewsradio.com and 1500 AM.